Full disclosure, a guy who's going to get mentioned in this video, Private Parts, sent me a key for his game on Twitter. Onto the video. In a nice change of pace, today we're not going to be talking about deceit or forms of rhetoric I find objectionable. I'm going to take a brief look at a video from a guy I think is simply wrong. And wrong in that I both disagree with his overall perspective, and I think he's messed up in his video, which I recently watched, and it is called Pirate Software Internet Villain. Hopefully you've already seen it. If you haven't, I recommend go taking a peep. It's one of those pieces where a hot topic is used as a springboard to talk about a broader issue. I've made many similar uploads, there's nothing wrong with it. I think it can be pretty interesting. Now when you do this, you kinda have to avoid lasering in on every little thing unless you want your video to be a million years long and risk losing the focus of your overarching point. However, issues may arise when what you're skimming over is of high relevance to your overarching point, and further problems may become apparent if you then get down into the weeds again later. Allow me to illustrate my point. Early in his video, Upper Echelon lays out the case that people were thirsty for Pirate Software's blood, that after the World of Warcraft roaching incident, a narrative of him never taking accountability formed, and people wanted to beat him over the head with that at any opportunity. One such opportunity that Upper Echelon mentions is this.
Found out that he allegedly sent out DMCA strikes against an indie game that may or may not have actually deserved it for maybe using his voice, but that's not really relevant for today.
Problem 1. If you're then going to go on and tell a story of people jumping on anything they can because of preconceived notions of a person.
You know how sometimes when you meet someone, you can't necessarily explain why, but you just immediately, viscerally, and deeply dislike them? Yeah, a lot of people feel that way about Pirate Software, myself kind of included, which led to a sort of feedback loop where thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people who already disliked him previously felt vindicated by all of these discoveries, piling onto anything that they could see that would reinforce their pre-existing opinion.
Well, then I'm going to have to disagree with you when you say you think the DMCA debacle isn't relevant today. See, I can agree to an extent that this is what's going on with the Stop Killing Games thing. It's practically tautological. The only reason that's a thing is because he's a popular public figure saying it, right? It's only a thing because he's known, so what he's known for is inextricably linked to that. But knocking a game off Steam with a DMCA claim many view as illegitimate, that's weapons grade. He could have been a nobody and had that blow up. As such, I actually think the details of that case are highly relevant to this narrative and shouldn't be glossed over. As I mentioned, there's a second problem as well. After zooming out for most of his video and giving more general commentary about people's behavior on the internet, how they give feedback, Upper Echelon zooms into the specifics again, and he says this.
He's also a person, and far from the likes of BitBoy or litigation trolls or previous contenders for internet villain before him, of which there were many, he hasn't really harmed people, has he? No, he hasn't. The honest answer is no. He doesn't harm people. They just don't like him, which I do think makes a difference in how the situation should be treated.
He hasn't harmed anyone. He's not like the litigation trolls. Personally, I think abusing a legal process to take a guy's game off of Steam because he was mad, and not because he had any actual evidence that what was on Steam infringed on his rights in any way, would certainly put him in that ballpark. That little thing you mentioned at the start and said wasn't relevant, I would suggest, is of extreme and direct importance to your conclusion. Not only that, but it's also of extreme relevance to the bigger picture take as well. In his video, Upper Echelon humanizes Pirate Software and relates what he's going through to his own experiences.
As soon as it's a mob screaming for you to grovel before them and apologize, at least for me. Again, I'm like 99% sure this is exactly what's happening with Pirate Software too. As soon as it's a mob, they're not getting what they want. It doesn't matter if you were wrong, and me personally, I certainly was wrong, at least in one of my most notable situations like this, the biggest one, back a number of years. But it doesn't matter anymore if you're right or wrong, because the mob doesn't deserve the satisfaction.
It's human, it's understandable, right? Personally, I'd say just do what you think is right, because otherwise you're controlled by the mob either way. But we can all understand what he's saying. A swarm is telling you you're wrong, so you double down. Screw those guys. That's all that Pirate Software does, right? It's an understandable reflex. It's just because of the mobs. Well, in the situation that was deemed irrelevant, Pirate Software hit this guy's game on Steam with a DMCA claim due to clips that were posted elsewhere. That one single guy told him, a day after the takedown, privately, that he's wrong, asked him to reverse it via a ticketing tool on Pirate Software's Discord. He explained no such content is on Steam. He reiterated to the mods that no such content is on Steam, and he filed a counterclaim. My understanding as a layperson is that after a counterclaim is filed, you've got a couple weeks before the platform puts that content back up. There was time to think about it. But what did Pirate Software do? Immediately, same day.
Hey, Kronos, we have to file a legal complaint against that dude earlier. There was a dude earlier today that went onto Reddit and said that he was using my voice in a video game, showed a bunch of videos of it, and then put that game up on Steam. A lot of people in the thread told him not to do that, that would end up being a legal problem for him. He did it anyway. So I filed a DMCA claim, and he has now filed a counterclaim against me. We're going to take you to court. You're going to lose. You cannot use somebody's likeness or voice in any way inside of your games without their permission. It's a really stupid thing to do. Incredibly so. So I'm going to send this over to Kronos now because he is a lawyer in copyright law. That is his job. Kronos, we have 14 days to respond to this. Welcome to the finding out timeline, bud.
With zero actual evidence that any infringing material was on Steam, with a statement from the relevant individual that that's not the case, he decided to state his intention to pursue a lawsuit. He does not just behave like this because it would be letting the mob win. It is who he is. Luckily, a lawyer stepped in and offered pro bono aid. His name's Mario Sarami. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. The other Frost spoke with this lawyer, and this was the reason for getting involved.
Now keep in mind, I'm not a free speech defense lawyer out of Connecticut that steps in from time to time to help content creators pro bono when their freedom of speech is being impeded, but Mario is. And he says Pirate Software's false DMCA takedown notice of idle streaming bonanza was unlawful. I spoke with him. Mario happened upon Ferentino's video talking about the false claim, and did not like that someone with a large and impressionable audience was spreading free speech misinformation. He also did not appreciate the lawsuit bully tactics. I quote, "It pissed me right the fuck off."
Mario sent Pirate Software a letter acting as a representative of the developer. In it, he thoroughly explains why Pirate Software is wrong, and likely horribly misled by someone who lacks expertise. As a layman, it's a very interesting letter to read. Link to Frost's coverage in the description so you can go over it in detail. Lots of interesting nuggets, like how due to jurisdiction, a duty to engage in good faith analysis of whether fair use applies before issuing a DMCA takedown notice applies, which I think clearly didn't even cross Pirate Software's mind. Mario explains you can do another one later, but take this shit down because it's illegal. Interestingly, Upper Echelon, he characterizes this as a move to minimize harm to his client.
The honest answer is no. He doesn't harm people. They just don't like him.
How much do you think having a letter like this sent out by a lawyer would have cost him if Mario hadn't stepped in? I honestly don't know. Certainly wouldn't have been free. Anyway, Mario continues and warns that he believes liability will be incurred. No bullshit, I'd be pretty scared to be receiving this letter. Another great nugget is where he explains that Pirate Software is a retard. Remember when Pirate Software said this?
We're going to take you to court. You're going to lose. You cannot use somebody's likeness or voice in any way inside of your games without their permission.
In a nutshell, Mario explains that using the DMCA to deal with misappropriation of likeness is illegal and can get you screwed. One last little nugget I love, though you should read the whole thing, it's really fun, is that Mario explains he's being merciful. His original plan was to try to bulldoze Pirate Software and his counsel until he realized they're just LARPing dipshits. Mario is very gentle, offers to talk, says he thinks they can reach a mutually agreeable solution, and says ta-ta. January 23rd, Private Parts lets us know that his game's back up on Steam, but Pirate Software didn't make any response to anything, and the other review outlet on Substack reported that Mario sent a follow-up letter on the 30th. In it, he explained to Pirate Software that the dev is still exploring whether to incorporate his vocal likeness in a work critical of him, and that they believe in good faith that would fall under fair use. That same day, Pirate Software responds to a tweet from the day before by the other Frost. Apparently, he doesn't read his letters, because for some reason he says the DMCA was not unlawful because he read a Reddit post by the dev that made him think it was on Steam. Despite everyone who goes to file a DMCA claim on Steam being warned, you really need to check to avoid this exact dumbass fuck up. All this not even getting into the lawyer's arguments, because after all, he prefers to get his legal counsel somewhere else. He lets us know that Redditors thought it was illegal. Seems to think it's very important that the dev said it was bait. And most importantly, in this tweet, Pirate Software explains why they dropped the DMCA claim. Did the lawyer's correspondence convince him? He says, "We took down the DMCA notice as he reached out and stated that he would be voice acting the lines instead. You're spreading misinformation in a biased form to generate views. We've handled this through through the legal route as is appropriate. But this statement in itself actually misinforms the public. See, while it is true that on the 21st, the developer did say he would be voice acting lines instead of using actual clips, and while on the 22nd, Kronos, Pirate Software's law lackey but not actual legal representation, did tell the dev's lawyer that that's why they would be lifting it, alongside the claim that using someone's voice without permission is not fair use. Uh-oh, this video is in danger, apparently. I'm not personally so convinced. That's why they dropped their claim. And if it was, they should have hit him with another claim immediately. See, another thing happened on the 22nd. As we saw, Mario sent Pirate Software a letter. Something I haven't shown you from it yet, but which you'll know about if you went and read it, is this little snippet. Because any promises my client made were based on these misrepresentations of fact and law, my client withdraws any promises made on January 21st, 2025. What was that promise made on the 21st again? Oh yeah, that he'd use voice acting instead. And a letter to Pirate Software on the 30th reiterated they're still thinking about using the voice lines. So he knew on the 22nd that that promise was revoked. He was reminded of that fact on the 30th. And on the 30th, he tells us the claim was released because he promised to do the voice acting instead of using clips. But he knew from the 22nd onwards, and was reminded on the 30th, that that promise had been retracted. If the dev's statement of intent to use those voice lines was enough to hit him with a claim, and the only thing that will lead to retraction is him promising not to, why didn't you hit him again? Because Pirate Software is a bully with money. He knew he'd scared Private Parts. Even though he was still thinking about using the voice lines, Private Parts had publicly stated he was looking for voice actors. Pirate Software knew he was going to get what he wanted, so he ran with the story of, the dev promised not to use my voice lines, so we retracted the claim. End the story, that's it, everyone's happy. Even though he'd known for over a week that that promise was retracted. The decision to definitely not use voice lines was only made public a few days after that. The reason? Money.
Using Thor's voice lines could still be potential trouble, as I would have to argue fair use in a court because it becomes a case-by-case basis. Mario's opinion was a 60% chance of winning if I were to pursue. Unfortunately, it would be a battle of wallets.
And 4 months ago, he confirmed in a YouTube comment that the reason he's not going to mess with it is no money. I get the impression that a lot of people don't know this is how it went down. Pirate Software hits this guy with what a lawyer considers to be a blatantly unlawful DMCA claim. Pirate Software's little flying monkey, his little UK lawyer friend, deceives the hell out of the dev to make him think he can't do that it would absolutely not be fair use. And as a result, the dev says he won't use the voice lines. A lawyer steps in to help this poor guy, explains there's a good case for it being fair use, and they retract that promise. Pirate Software pretends that all that happened was a lawful DMCA claim was made, the dev promised not to use the lines, they retracted it. That's it. Done. And his story looks true because ultimately the dev didn't use those lines because he wouldn't be able to afford to defend himself, despite believing he'd be a bit more likely than not to win. And I'd like to suggest that if he could get away with pulling this sort of shit for his other problems, he would. But whatever, I'm real sick of this all now. Let's relax by playing a bit of that dev's game.
And my doctor told me that in your mid-30s, sometimes your voice can drop, and you basically go through second puberty.
Oh, that? Yeah, that's not the voice actor, that's the actual line. You just dump whatever you want in the folders and it plays instead of the original clips.